My friends, when you step into the ring of life, whether it's in business, in school, in politics, or in your own personal journey, sometimes you get knocked down. Sometimes you take a hit so hard it feels like the world is watching you fall. And in that moment, you have two choices: stay down or rise up stronger. You know, there will come a time in every life when the ground beneath you feels like it's been pulled away. A time when you've trained, you've planned, you've dreamed, and yet, somehow, you still get knocked down. Maybe it's a failed exam you studied weeks for. Maybe it's a job interview that didn't go your way. Maybe it's a project you poured your heart into, only to watch it fall short. Or maybe it's something deeper, a moment when the world says no to you, louder than you thought you could handle. And in that moment, it hurts. Let's not pretend otherwise. Defeat is painful. Falling short is humbling. Nobody enjoys the sting of disappointment. But here's what I want you to remember. Resilience is not about pretending that the fall didn't happen. Resilience is about deciding that the fall will not be the end of your story. Every champion has been knocked down. Every innovator has faced rejection. Every leader has known defeat. What separates them from the rest is not that they avoided failure, but that they refused to let failure have the last word. They got up, they adjusted, they tried again, and eventually they won. Now, think about the lessons hidden in defeat. When you lose, you discover your weaknesses. You see where you weren't as prepared as you thought. You uncover the blind spots you didn't notice before. And yes, that truth can hurt, but it is also the key to growth. Because resilience is not about bouncing back to who you were before. You don't want to go back. You want to go forward, stronger than you were yesterday. It's like a fighter in the ring. The first time they get knocked out, it shocks them. But if they're wise, they don't just walk away. They watch the tape. They study the punch that landed. They learn how to guard better, how to move smarter, how to anticipate next time. And when they step back into the ring, they carry not just muscle, but wisdom. That's what resilience does. It transforms defeat into preparation for victory. In education, this principle is everything. A student who fails a math test has two options: give up and say, "I'm just not good at this," or look at every mistake as a clue, every red mark as a guide. That's resilience. In life, the same is true. The entrepreneur whose first business collapses has two choices: see it as proof they can't succeed, or treat it as tuition, the price of learning lessons that no classroom could ever teach. And let me tell you something. Those who choose the second path, the path of resilience, they go farther than anyone else. Because resilience builds character. It strengthens the mind. It creates leaders who are humble enough to know they can fail, and courageous enough to rise again. But here's the important part. Resilience is not only about you. When you get back up, when you stand tall after defeat, you send a message to everyone around you. You teach your friends, your family, your children, your community that setbacks are not the end of the road. They are detours on the way to something greater. You model perseverance. You inspire courage. And sometimes your resilience becomes the reason somebody else finds the strength to get back up too. So the next time life knocks you down, remember this: you are not defined by the fall. You are defined by your response. You can stay on the ground, or you can rise, brush off the dust, and step forward again. That decision, that moment is where greatness is born. One of the greatest teachers in life isn't a professor in a classroom. It isn't a textbook or a lecture hall. It is our own mistakes. Every time we make one, life gives us feedback. Every time we stumble, life hands us a lesson plan. And yet, so often, we run from it. We hide from it. We pretend it didn't happen. We point fingers instead of reflecting. But here's the truth. The only real failure is the failure to learn. You see, mistakes are not proof that you are incapable. Mistakes are proof that you are trying, that you are pushing the edges of your comfort zone, that you are stepping into territory where growth is possible. Nobody grows in the safe zone. Nobody learns in the space where everything is easy. Learning comes in those moments when you stretch, when you reach, when you fall short, and then you pause and say, "What can this teach me?" Think about some of the greatest minds in history. Thomas Edison tried thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Thousands. And when people asked him about all those failures, he didn't call them wasted effort. He said, "I didn't fail. I just found thousands of ways that didn't work." What was he really saying? He was saying that mistakes are data. They are not dead ends. They are instructions pointing you closer to the truth. The same is true for each of us. A student who miscalculates a math problem isn't doomed to be bad at math. That mistake is simply a signal. Go back. Look closer. Understand why this didn't work. A young person who gives a speech and stumbles over their words isn't destined to be a poor communicator. That moment is a chance to reflect, to practice, to grow stronger for the next time. But learning from mistakes requires something deeper than awareness. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to admit, "I was wrong." And in our world, that can feel hard. We are taught to hide weakness, to pretend we have it all together. But the truth is, there is power in admitting mistakes. Because when you admit them, you disarm them. You take away their ability to define you, and instead, you redefine them as stepping stones. Now, let's be clear. Repeating the same mistake over and over, that's not learning. That's avoiding responsibility. That's what happens when we refuse to pay attention to what life is teaching us. The real strength is in reflection, in asking, what went wrong? What can I do differently? How can I ensure that this same mistake does not happen again? That's how you grow, not just older, but wiser. Education itself is built on this principle. Think about how we learn to read, to write, to solve equations. A child doesn't write a perfect sentence the first time they pick up a pencil. They misspell words, they reverse letters, they scribble. A math student doesn't solve an equation flawlessly the first time. They try, they miss, they correct. The process of learning is the process of making mistakes and refusing to stop there. It's the courage to try again, this time with greater understanding. And this lesson is not limited to academics. It extends to leadership, to business, to relationships, to every arena of life. A leader who makes a poor decision but refuses to acknowledge it, who insists on repeating the same error out of pride. That leader not only fails themselves, but fails the people depending on them. But a leader who can say, "Yes, I made a mistake. Here's what I've learned. Here's how I will do better next time." That leader builds trust. That leader earns respect. That leader grows. In our communities, in our schools, in our families, we need to foster this same spirit. We need to stop shaming mistakes as permanent marks of failure and start treating them as invitations to learn. Imagine a world where every young person believed that a wrong answer wasn't the end of their intelligence, but the beginning of their growth. Imagine a workplace where employees weren't punished for mistakes, but encouraged to analyze them, to improve systems, to get better. That kind of culture doesn't just avoid failure, it builds innovation. Because the truth is, progress is built on trial and error. The airplane wasn't invented in one try. Cures for diseases didn't appear overnight. Social justice wasn't achieved without missteps along the way. Progress is messy. It's full of mistakes. But progress comes because people decided that mistakes were not final. They were lessons. So the next time you stumble, don't run from it. Don't let embarrassment or fear make you hide from the truth. Take a deep breath. Study what went wrong. Accept responsibility. And then step forward with the confidence that this mistake is not the end of you. It's the making of you. If there is one lesson history has taught us again and again, it is that no one achieves greatness alone. No victory, no breakthrough, no movement that changed the world was ever the result of one person standing apart, fighting only for themselves. Real strength, lasting strength, comes when people come together, when we recognize that we are bound by common hopes, common struggles, and common dreams. You see, society often celebrates the lone hero, the genius working late into the night, the athlete winning the game with a last, second shot, the leader delivering a stirring speech, and yes, individuals matter. But behind every one of those stories, there is always a team, a family, a community lifting them up, supporting them, guiding them forward. The truth is, unity multiplies strength in ways that no individual effort ever can. Think about it. A single voice can be powerful, but a choir of voices can shake the walls of injustice. One person can spark an idea, but it takes a community to bring that idea to life. A single hand can carry a burden for a while, but many hands can carry it much further. That is the difference unity makes. It turns small beginnings into unstoppable movements. Now, unity is not the absence of differences. It doesn't mean we all think the same, look the same, believe the same. In fact, unity is strongest when it embraces diversity, when it brings together different perspectives, different strengths, different talents. Just as a puzzle needs many pieces to be complete, a community needs many voices, many gifts, many contributions to reach its fullest potential. And unity requires humility. It requires each of us to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, that we can't do it all on our own, that sometimes the person next to us has wisdom or strength we need. Too often, pride tells us to stand apart, to carry the weight alone. But real progress happens when we say, I can't do this by myself. But together, we can do anything. Education shows us this clearly. A classroom where students compete to outshine one another may produce a few stars. But a classroom where students collaborate, where they help one another, where they share knowledge, that classroom produces not just individual achievers, but communities of learners who lift each other up. The same is true in life. Success is not a race to leave others behind. It's a journey we walk together, bringing others along as we climb. Now, unity does not come easy. It takes effort. It means listening when we'd rather argue. It means forgiving when we've been hurt. It means finding common ground even when our differences feel wide, but the alternative, division, isolation, distrust, weakens us all. A divided people cannot stand strong against challenges. A fractured community cannot solve big problems. But when we come together, when we set aside ego and embrace one another's humanity, there is very little we cannot accomplish. Look at the great struggles of history. The fight for civil rights, the movements for freedom across the globe, the victories over injustice and oppression. None of these were won by one person alone. They were won because people stood shoulder to shoulder, because they believed in one another, because they understood that unity was their greatest weapon and their greatest shield. And it is not just in history books. Look around today, in moments of crisis, whether it's a natural disaster, an economic hardship, or a global challenge, what carries people through is not one person's strength, but the strength of many coming together. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers opening their doors to strangers, communities uniting for the common good. That is where hope is found, and here's the beauty of it. Unity doesn't just solve problems, it changes hearts. When you work side by side with someone who looks different from you, who prays differently than you, who grew up in another place, you start to see that what unites us is greater than what divides us. You begin to understand that our shared humanity is stronger than any wall we might try to build between us. So, if you want to be strong, don't walk alone. If you want to change your community, don't do it in isolation. Seek out others, listen to them, learn from them, share the load, because every great achievement, whether in science, in art, in social progress, was born out of collaboration. One of the hardest things for any of us to do is to look in the mirror and say, "This one's on me." It's human nature to want to shift the blame, to explain away our failures, to point the finger at circumstances or other people. But real growth, real character, begins the moment we accept responsibility. Accountability is not punishment, it is a path to power. It is the discipline that turns mistakes into lessons and lessons into strength. Think about it. A student who blames the teacher for every low grade will never learn. But a student who says, "I didn't study enough, I didn't prepare the way I should have," suddenly has the power to change the outcome next time. The difference is accountability. When you own your shortcomings, you gain control over your future. When you deny them, you hand that control away. Now, accountability doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean you'll never fall short. What it means is that when you do, you're willing to admit it. You're willing to confront the uncomfortable truth. And in doing so, you open the door to growth. Because the strongest people are not the ones who never make mistakes. They are the ones who learn from them, who rise above them, and who refuse to repeat them. Leaders especially must understand this. A leader who cannot admit mistakes cannot be trusted. A leader who refuses to take responsibility will always repeat the same errors, and those errors don't just hurt the leader. They hurt everyone who follows. But a leader who is accountable, who stands up and says, "I made the wrong call, and here's how I will do better," earns respect. That kind of honesty builds credibility, and credibility builds influence. Accountability is also about discipline. It is about holding yourself to a higher standard, even when nobody else is watching. It's about doing the right thing not because someone might find out if you don't, but because you know your integrity matters. The truth is, character is not built in the spotlight. It's built in the quiet moments, in the small choices, in the times when only you know the decision you're making. And accountability doesn't just affect individuals. It strengthens communities. Imagine a classroom where no one took responsibility. Every mistake would be someone else's fault. Every failure someone else's problem. Nothing would improve, nothing would move forward. But in a classroom where accountability is the norm, where every student says, "This is my role, this is my responsibility," suddenly the class begins to thrive. The same principle applies to teams, workplaces, even nations. Accountability is the glue that holds progress together. The challenge, though, is that accountability requires humility. It requires courage. It requires you to be honest about your flaws in a world that often tells us to cover them up. But here's the secret. When you take responsibility, you don't shrink. You grow. You earn respect not by pretending you're flawless, but by proving you're willing to face your flaws head on. History gives us countless examples. Think of great leaders who admitted when they were wrong, who acknowledged their failures openly. Their legacies endure not because they were perfect, but because they were human enough to be accountable. On the other hand, history also shows us what happens when leaders refuse accountability. Mistakes are repeated, trust is broken, and progress stalls. In education, accountability is the foundation of learning. A student who shrugs off failure will never improve, but one who says, "I could have done better, and I will do better," is already on the path to growth. In relationships, accountability builds trust. When someone hurts you and owns up to it, it doesn't erase the hurt, but it creates the possibility of healing. In life, accountability builds resilience, because every time you own your part, you equip yourself to rise stronger next time. And let's be honest, accountability is not easy. It forces us to confront the gap between who we are and who we want to be. It pushes us to stop making excuses and start making changes. But it is precisely that challenge that builds character. Because character is forged in the fire of responsibility, it's in the moments when you could have lied, but you told the truth, when you could have blamed someone else, but you carried your share, when you could have hidden, but you stepped forward. So, if you want to grow stronger, if you want to lead, if you want to earn trust and build lasting success, embrace accountability. Don't run from it. Don't fear it. Because accountability is not your enemy. It is your ally. It doesn't tear you down. It shapes you into someone worthy of respect. At the end of the day, accountability is not about the mistakes you've made. It's about the choices you make afterward. Do you hide? Or do you take responsibility? Do you excuse yourself? Or do you push yourself to be better? Those choices define your character more than any setback ever could. And when you choose accountability, you don't just build a stronger version of yourself. You give others permission to do the same. You create a culture where honesty is valued, where responsibility is honored, where growth is possible for everyone. That's how classrooms become places of real learning. That's how teams become champions. That's how nations move forward. So don't fear accountability. Embrace it. Let it sharpen you. Let it guide you. Let it remind you that mistakes do not define you. Your response to them does. Because in the end, accountability is the bridge between failure and success, between weakness and strength, between who you are and who you are meant to become. My friends, when life knocks you down, when the world counts you out, you have a choice. You can stay on the canvas, or you can rise with resilience. You can repeat the same mistakes, or you can learn from them. You can stand alone, or you can find strength in unity. You can hide from responsibility, or you can embrace accountability. And you can sit back hoping for change, or you can educate yourself, prepare yourself, and act to bring that change into being. That is the lesson of every great life, every great movement, every great generation. That progress is never given, it is earned. And it is earned by those who refuse to quit after a knockout, who refuse to stumble twice in the same way, who refuse to turn their backs on one another, and who refuse to pass the blame instead of carrying the burden. So let us be that generation. Let us be the students who study harder, the leaders who stand taller, the neighbors who lift one another higher. Let us be the men and women who rise after defeat, who grow after mistakes, who unite in the face of division, who take responsibility instead of running from it. And above all, let us never forget that education and action, learning and doing, are the twin engines that drive us forward. Because in the end, the knockout does not define you, the comeback does. The failure does not define you, the lesson does. The fall does not define you, the rise does. So the next time life throws its hardest punch, I want you to stand tall and say, yes, I was knocked down. But I will not stay down. I will rise smarter, I will rise stronger, and I will rise together with those around me, and I will not let this happen again. That, my friends, is how champions are made. That is how leaders are born. And that is how we move forward, together, toward a future that is brighter than anything we've left behind. Thank you. God bless you, and let's keep rising.